Today I'm going to be whipping up my favorite scone recipe. These are cranberry orange scones. They're festive, they're beautiful, they're delicious, and they really couldn't be easier to make. So here's what you're gonna need. A couple things. So what comes in the kit, if you are purchasing a kit, if you're not, remember you can always shoot me an email and I can send you a copy of this recipe and instruction sheet. So what do we have? Really simple. We have our dry ingredients in here. This is going to be just our flour, sugar, and baking powder in here. In this one we have our fresh cranberries and our orange. We've got our little liquid cups here. This is going to be our buttermilk and vanilla. We have some egg in this one, and then we have our butter in this one. This is powdered sugar, so this is going to be for the glaze that we're going to be putting on our scones at the very end. So that is what I give you in the kit. Those are the food ingredients. Now, what are you going to need in order to make this? So some type of mixing bowl. Doesn't have to be too big. A zester or a grater. This is actually going to do double duty. I'm going to show you one of my favorite kind of kitchen hacks or tips. So you want one of those. A basting brush is optional. You can always use just kind of like a spoon or something like that, but this comes in really handy for when we do the egg wash on the top. Then we have a little bit of sugar to sprinkle on the top. Again, this is optional. You don't have to have it. We're going to need a little dish here, and then a cookie sheet lined with parchment. I like to use parchment when baking. It makes for really nice kind of brown on the bottom. It doesn't stick, and it really prevents burning. So it's really, really handy. Okay, are we ready to make these? All right, so with clean hands, we're going to start because we're going to be getting in there with our hands. So I might put on gloves just so I can, I don't have to run back and forth because I'm all wired up here. So, and I got gloves, you might as well use them. So we're going to go ahead and start by opening up, oops, the dry ingredients. A big old hole in it. Okay. Because I tore it open, that's why. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and empty here. I'll move this in front of the camera so you can actually see what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm just emptying my dry ingredients right into the bowl. So I am going to be doing a small kit. The small kit makes 4 good-sized scones. If you're doing a bigger kit, you're going to have double of everything that you see here because it will make 8 scones. Okay, everything in there. So again, we have sugar, flour, and baking powder is all in this bowl here. Okay, the next part, what we're going to do is we're going to take our butter. So whenever we're making a pastry of any kind and we're cutting in butter, meaning that we are putting in cold butter and kind of incorporating it throughout, we want to make sure our butter is cold. It's got to be cold. So we're not making cookies. We don't want to cream our butter and sugar together. We want the butter to be dispersed into tiny little pieces. So this is my trick. I love to take butter and use a zester or a grater in order to get really tiny pieces. So, and then you can kind of just let these pieces fall. But you see, look at that. It just, I mean, it cuts up the butter for you because really what we want to do is we want to make sure that we cut up our butter into little cubes or really tiny pieces, and then we're going to incorporate it throughout. Okay, so I did my small pieces, and I'm going to take my last hunk, and I mean, look at this. Oh my gosh. Not only is it pretty, but it's super practical because we want to get this butter into really small pieces, and this is going to allow us to do that. Works so great, but you have to have cold butter. So make sure that you start with cold butter. Pull it out of the fridge just when you're ready to use it. Luckily, it's at the beginning of the recipe, so really as soon as you're ready to start, you can pull out your butter. And then it's okay if you have some bigger pieces of butter because we're going to still use our hands to kind of get in there. Okay, so I'm just going to tap this. Make sure all my butter is off of there. Beautiful. And then we're going to get in there. I guess I lied about the gloves, huh? I'm just getting in there. So then what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of take those little pieces going to just smoosh them in our fingers with the flour. Because again, we really just want to incorporate everything. Another tip too is to really just keep everything refrigerated. So keep your flour refrigerated. That's gonna keep everything cold. And when we're doing a pastry that's gonna have, you know, cold butter and kind of like flakier layers, it's really good to just have everything cold anyway, so that that butter stays nice and chilled. And then that's what gives us that beautiful texture when it becomes baked. So I'm just kind of running my fingers through and making sure that I have all of the pieces just kind of smooshed and incorporated. The butter's going to be kind of the size, you want it like the size of peas, or even a little bit smaller. So I'm just kind of running my fingers through. This is so therapeutic. So nice. So soft. Just make sure you have clean hands, especially if you have kiddos helping in the kitchen, you know. Those little grubby hands of theirs. Okay, so I'm just running through. Beautiful. Okay. So, next up what we're going to do is we're going to do the orange zest. Now these are cranberry orange scones, so we want to get that orange flavor in there. And the way that we do that is we use the zest. So while the juice is flavorful and we're going to use it for our glaze, that zest is really where most of the flavor is. So I'm just going to take it out of here, kind of leave the cranberries in the bag because we're going to come back to those. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to zest the outside of this orange. So again, I have a half because I'm doing a smaller kit. And we want to use our zester. Use this box grater, whatever you have, to get the zest off of your orange. And we're really just going to do the top orange part. So you see, as soon as I get down to the whiter part, it starts to become really bitter. So just do the very surface of your whole orange or your half an orange if you're doing a small kit. Right away, you'll be able to smell. So good. Oh my gosh. I love it. I love the flavor of orange in baked goods. I think it's super underrated. We're going to be doing cranberries too. I think they're really seasonal and just absolutely gorgeous. And cranberries alone are extremely bitter, right? So typically you jelly them, or you put sugar with them or something because they're extremely bitter. But when they bake in the oven with everything else, by the way, watch your fingers when you're doing this. It's kind of dangerous, but just go slow. I say that because I got my fingers sometimes, but I'm also talking to you. So anyway, when the cranberries kind of bake in the oven with everything, they just kind of like caramelize and become kind of tart and sweet, and with everything else, you bite into it, it is just amazing. I cannot wait for you to try. Okay, so we have our orange zest in here. I'm just gonna kind of mix it up with my hands. Okay, and then we're gonna make a well in the center. Ooh, first, we're gonna take this egg. So this is half an egg for a small person kit. And we are just gonna set aside just a little bit, maybe just like a couple teaspoons. I'm going back and forth because there's like an egg white that wants to carry its whole friend along. You see that? So I just want to save a little bit for, I'm going to have to get a teaspoon or something because it's not wanting to separate. Okay, I'm just going to save a little bit for brushing on the top. There we go. Okay, and then that egg, the rest of it goes in. So a couple teaspoons go into a dish. That's going to be brushed on the top to make them really, really nice and golden brown and beautiful. Okay, so then we do the buttermilk and the vanilla. Right in. Okay. And then you can start with a spoon, or you can just get in there with your hands. So I kind of like to just kind of gather up the outside, and you're just going to start bringing it together. You don't want to be too rough with it. It will be a drier dough, totally normal. Really resist the urge to want to add any liquid to it because it will come together. Once you start to work it with your hands a little bit, it will soften up some of the butter and it will come together. I promise, promise, promise. It doesn't seem like it will, but it's going to. At this point in time, I'm going to go ahead and add in my cranberries. And then I'm just going to kind of start bringing this together. Just kind of start pushing it together with my hands. And really what we're doing is making the dough. There goes a cranberry. These cranberries love to go crazy and let loose and run all over the place. So when you're putting this together, oop, there's one. Make sure that, you know, you just keep gathering them into the dough. So again, when we get in there and we just start to kind of fold it together and we just want to kind of bring all those little crumblies to the center, it's going to start to form our dough. And so from here, you can empty it onto your counter. I don't even flour my counter really at this point because I don't want to, it's a really dry dough, so I don't want to add any more flour to this really. You don't really need it. I know it says it in my directions, but you don't really need it. So I'm just gonna keep gathering everything together. Again, mind the cranberries, they're gonna wanna run away from you. Cranberries are so bouncy, it's hilarious. They're like little tiny edible bouncy balls. So just make sure you keep gathering them in. So I just keep kind of gathering everything in. And again, once our hands are, the natural heat of our hands kind of warms up that dough, it's gonna melt some of that butter and it's going to start to come together for us. So the trick is to just keep gathering it together very gently. I'm just kind of doing a gentle knead here. I don't want to overwork the dough too much, but I just want to bring everything together. So I just kind of like gather everything up and then press down. And you can see that my dough is really starting to come together at this point. So again, really try and resist the urge to want to add any liquid to it. That is what, you know, a scone recipe is a bit drier. So you're going to want to, I know you will, but don't do it. Resist the urge. Okay. So then I just work it. I work it and you can distribute the cranberries if you feel like they're all kind of congealing into one spot. That's totally fine. So again, what I typically do is just to keep it moving too on my counter, I kind of just flatten and then turn and kind of gather up any loose pieces just like this. And then you can kind of turn it over and gather up any pieces that kind of fall. Okay, we're really getting it together here. It's looking beautiful. So we want to get it into a disc shape. So I'm gonna start finally with my rolling pin. Now we want to get it really kind of compact. So I'm just like kind of creating this little ball here, pressing it down, and then we're going to kind of start to roll. Now make sure you keep your disc moving, and every now and then you'll want to bring it kind of back together. So the reason why we need to keep it moving is so that it doesn't stick to our countertop, because it will want to. So we're just going to kind of roll it like this and then give it a turn. Okay, so we want to make sure that we roll this out to about one or 2 inches and try to get it as equal as possible on all sides so that our scones come out equally. Now these will puff up in the oven, so keep that in mind as well. You can see the little flecks of the orange zest in here. It's so beautiful. So you can kind of clean up your edges a little bit like this if you want to. Okay, so now we will cut these. So I'm just going to take one of these bench scrapers here and just use it to cut in half. So again, I'm doing a 2-person or a smaller kit, and so I'm going to cut it into 4ths. If you're doing a bigger kit, then you're going to cut it into 4ths and then 8ths. So these are the scones. We're going to put it on the baking sheet right next to us. So they came together beautifully. It just takes a little bit of manipulation, a little bit of elbow grease, but they'll come together. Okay, so give them some space on that baking sheet. We're going to take our brush and that little bit of egg that we reserved, and we're just gonna brush the tops of these. Just a little bit, little dab of egg on each one. And again, this is really gonna make a beautiful, nice top, golden brown top. So I have my oven preheating at 400 degrees. These are gonna bake at 400 degrees for about 15 minutes until they're puffed and golden brown. Beautiful. See, it really doesn't take a lot of egg, just a couple teaspoons we need. And again, if you want, you can sprinkle a little bit of sugar on the top. These aren't very sweet at all, in my opinion. And that little extra sugar on top just kind of seals the deal and gets a nice, beautiful kind of brown on the top. So, in preheated oven for about 15 minutes. So while our scones are in the oven, we are going to go ahead and make the glaze for these. So it is an orange glaze, and it's very simple, and it's just gonna go be drizzled over the top and just be a really nice kind of complement to the tartness and bitterness of the cranberries, and kind of bring a little sweetness, because again, my scones aren't over the top sweet, which I really like. So that makes it good for kind of like a breakfast item or even an afternoon treat. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and open up my powdered sugar. So this is just powdered sugar in here. And I'm gonna empty it into a bowl. We're gonna take the juice of our orange. So we're gonna take this guy here, and I'm just gonna squeeze in. It's probably just gonna take the juice of about this guy. So one thing about making a glaze is that you never need as much liquid as you think you do. So I just like to squeeze in a little bit. You can measure this for sure. I put in the instructions, you know, just squeeze it into a dish and then measure it out. But you know, if you feel confident enough to be able to do this, then you can. So it's going to kind of start to come together. So obviously I need just a little bit more liquid here, because it is still pretty thick. So we want it to be able to drizzle nicely. We don't want it too thin to where it's just going to kind of run everywhere, but we also don't want it too thick that we can't kind of dangle it over. So this is too thick, in my opinion. So we want to be able to kind of do a nice, beautiful drizzle. So we'll probably end up using almost all of the juice of this orange half. And depending on, you know, how big your orange is, obviously, they're all a little bit different sizes, and they all have kind of a little bit different amounts of juice in them, but it will come together to make this glaze. And this is what I want here. So I want to be able to just kind of drizzle it with the end of my knife. And I just stir it with a little butter knife. It does the trick really, really well. And as this sits, it'll kind of harden up on you just a little bit. Simply just give it a stir, and it'll be ready for your scones. Okay guys, my scones are done. So you can see they are just golden, beautiful on the top. So delicious. They smell absolutely amazing. So I'm going to show you how I glaze these. It's really important that you wait to glaze them until they are fully pretty much room temperature. Otherwise, the glaze is going to just kind of melt all over the place. So these are still kind of warm, but I want to show you guys how I just glaze these. So I just take a little bit on the end. And if you want to do this a different way, if you want to use a spoon, if you have kind of like a piping thing, you want to do that, totally up to you, whatever you want to do. It doesn't have to be fancy. I'm just going to take this, and I'm just going to kind of go back and forth just like that. And then it's going to just kind of, and you can go like, you know, crosswise like this to kind of create this lattice effect. but it's just gonna be absolutely beautiful. Look at that. These are still kind of warm, so it's melting a little bit. I like to put them on a cooling rack, and then I'll put that parchment that I used to bake them on underneath, and then drizzle them with the glaze so that it catches everything. These are it, you guys. I love, look at these. Look at how these cranberries just kind of burst in there, and they become kind of caramelized, and they're just amazing. You guys, these smell so good. I can smell the orange zest. I can smell the cranberries, the vanilla. Amazing, amazing. And then when the glaze is on there, you get that kind of a slightly orange flavor as well that just kind of works so beautifully with the rest of the scones. It's so good. It's a great recipe to have. Comes together really fast. And they're just beautiful to look at. So I hope you enjoy this recipe, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a great rest of your year and happy holidays to everybody. I will see you guys in 2022. Take care.